I had no reaction to Ben Whittaker giving it to the corner.
Yeah.
Because this is the same corner that had called him a quitter.
You know, he done it and he shut them up, but he wasn't disrespectful towards his opponent.
And then some people have given you a bit of stick on social media. That's the outcome. I find it surprising.
We have resilience, but nowadays it's a whole different world. And every day this kid is hearing and seeing and reading what people's opinions are of him. Physically, boxing's hard, but now psychologically, emotionally, it's so much harder because of the social media aspect to it.
I think he's been a brilliant, brilliant showman in terms of, I think, the way that he's handled the PR around this fight.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He certainly can't sell a fight.
The personal issues going on between father and son, they've been washed out in the public. It's horrible to see. It'd be great if they could make it up, but it's not going to happen. And I can't see Senior turning up at this fight. He's a man of his word.
Eubank has got that dangerous uppercut or an overhand shot in Conor. I just don't see it going the distance. I see one knocking the other out.
It's going to be a brutal fight, you know, a bit like their fathers were, but 35 years ago.
Ben's power playing a big part in this because he's going to fall short because of the size difference. And Eubank is wily enough and clever enough.
Welcome to episode 117 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Joining us today is a former freeweight world champion, Duke McKenzie, and a two-weight world champion, Steve Collins. Nice to see you, fellas. Let's start this discussion with the weekend's events and the big win for Ben Whittaker. Spence, you were at the fight. Mm-hmm. What did you make of the performance?
I thought it was a great performance, if I'm honest. Listen, this kid had an immense amount of pressure on his shoulders going into this one. We saw the online hate. We saw the interview afterwards, the press conference afterwards, where them emotions did come out. So I thought it was a calculated performance. He took his time. He went out there. He controlled the space. The team up with Andy Lee proved to be a good one. He was sitting down on his shots a little bit more and landed a big right hand. Cameron's legs just seemed to dip a little bit and he went in and he finished the job. I thought it was a very good performance. And by the way, I thought it was a very good stoppage.
I was going to ask you that, Duke, and you, Steve, as well. Was it stopped too early? Because there's a suggestion that maybe it was.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it was stopped too early at all. You know, as Spencer's already said, Cameron was gone and Whittaker was just unloading and he dropped everything on him. The first shot was the classic shot, wasn't it? A little pullback, this right hand over the top, stopped Cameron in his tracks. And then from there, Cameron went back to the ropes and just was cowering, obviously, because the onslaught was on. But I thought the stoppage was absolutely spot on. Didn't see anything wrong with it whatsoever.
You go with that, Steve?
Yeah, we're all in agreement here. I mean, I watched on television and I initially thought he may have stopped it too soon. But when I saw the playback, I actually think it was a great call by the referee. He stepped in just in time and there's no argument at the stoppage. No one argued because they knew if he let it go on, he would have finished up probably hurt or on the deck. And what's the point? You know, I think he timed it really well.
Were you surprised or disappointed with Liam Cameron?
Simon, I think that what his game plan was, speaking to him, I was with him for the few days before that, and the game plan was always to take Ben Whittaker late on. He knew that Whittaker was going to be dangerous and he'd be trying to control the space early on. He also felt that Ben Whittaker was struggling to make the weight. The weigh-in was brought forward to 10 a.m. the day before, which is unusual. These guys will know, you know, they used to weigh in on the day, but the weigh-ins now predominantly are at 1 p.m. That's the time scale. So straight away you're thinking, well, why have they done that for Ben Whittaker? Then when he turned up 40 minutes late. He looked like he was sweating a little bit and he weighed bang on the limit, 12 stone 7. So I think they had a calculated gamble. What we're going to do is we're going to let him punch himself out a little bit, take him into the later rounds, and that's what happened. But he got found out by doing that. He wasn't active enough. He was covering up, and Whittaker found the holes, and he created the space. What was your reaction, by the way, to Ben Shalom jumping into the ring? What did you think of that?
Well, I didn't have a reaction to Ben. I was going to ask you that question, but I'll answer it first and ask you guys back. I had no reaction to Ben Whittaker giving it to the corner because this is the same corner that had called him a quitter. Mm-hmm. Now, you guys can speak to this far more eloquently than me. You can't call a footballer a cheat and you can't call a fighter a quitter because they don't take very kindly to it. So I'm not surprised that Whittaker went over to the corner and give it to the corner. I know that their corner man, Frank Smith, is a nice guy and all that sort of stuff. But did you have any... I mean, Dave Caldwell was properly battering Ben Whittaker about going over to the corner, about decorum and style and classless and all this sort of stuff. Where were you guys in all that?
I just think from an emotive standpoint, when you're fighting, your emotions are heightened to a point where, you know, and once you've won the fight, your emotions are heightened to a point where you can't really control yourself. And if you've won the fight, you know, to go over to the other guy's corner and start giving them stick, well, I make him right. I don't see there's any harm in it. I don't see no harm in it.
No, I would agree. He showed respect to Cameron, who his opponent was, but he didn't show respect to the corner who was slagging him off. They went in the ring, so he went to them and more or less told them to stuff it because you know, he'd done it and he shut them up. But he wasn't disrespectful towards his opponent, but he was disrespectful towards the corner.
Because that's how he felt.
And it's an emotional and it's a drive to get him, you know, to fight better, and it worked. And this is the game. I mean, if they're all well behaved and done everything by the book, it'd be very boring.
I thought Andy Lee handled himself very well. I've got Matchroom on the brain. It's not Frank Smith, it's Grant Smith. There's my agenda serving out, blaming Matchroom for everything. Let's have a listen to, there was an emotional press conference afterwards. Let's have a listen to Ben Whittaker speaking after the fight.
It was the 6 months out, you know, little things. Stuff like my brother had 2 daughters and I couldn't really enjoy it too much because what I was going through online. And it didn't really bother me, but it was like even close friends, people that I classed as family left me. They had a lot to say about me. But it was a great time to really just go back to the old Ben Whittaker, you know. Before the Olympics, I locked in, I trained hard, and I dedicated to the sport. My life was moving, 100 miles an hour. Like I said, I come from a humble household where not a lot of stuff really was given to us. So to be in the position of everything coming at me at free will, it was amazing, it was good. But that 6 months out really humbled me, got me closer to God. And the people around me, the small people I had around me was just what I needed.
This emotional reaction, coupled with the reception you got coming in the ring. Now, I don't mean to be mean-spirited, and I have the deepest admiration for all fighters, and I like this kid. But I'm trying to understand where this outlook comes from. You brought some of this attention upon yourself. You wanted to adopt a personality that is very charismatic and brash, and I like it, and I think it's great for the sport. You wanted to, and I admire it as well, fling your silver medal away because you didn't come here for a silver medal. So you've created this disposition, and then some people have given you a bit of stick on social media, and that's the outcome. I find it surprising to see that.
Those emotions will come out after in the manner of the victory, because although he started a slight favourite going into that one, a lot of people felt that he was an underdog and he had to prove himself. But it wasn't. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what he had to do was not just go in there and win the fight, but he had to make a statement, and he'd done all that. So I get them emotions. I totally understand it. Like the outburst at the end of the fight, he would do that because the emotions. He derailed and he's put himself back on the track.
When you see that, I mean, I don't want to be mean-spirited about it, but I think you've got to take your licks. I think you've got to take adversity.
We have resilience, but nowadays it's a whole different world. There's this communication, there's these phones, there's these messages, there's these apps, right? And every day this kid is hearing and seeing and reading what people's opinions are of him. And he's young, he's a young mind and a young athlete and a young inexperienced person in the world, really. It's an awful lot nowadays. Nowadays people could slag you off and you could have an argument with them. You get 100,000 people commenting on you, and it hurts your feelings, and you become emotional. But it's tougher now. It really is.
If you can take, and I'm playing devil's advocate for the purpose of this conversation because we're all men here, right? If you can take the praise and all that goes with that, because I question the thing about pressure. I think it's about interest. Because if there was no interest in Ben Whittaker, he wouldn't be in the position that he's in with opportunities. Isn't it a case of if you can take all the praise, all the upside, all the accolades, surely when you don't deliver, you're going to have some resilience about taking the other side of the argument.
The but is, Simon, is that boxers are like we're like anybody else, and we ride an emotional roller coaster from fight to fight.
Yep.
Making weight, losing weight, putting it on, losing it again, fight to fight, and your emotions can get heightened to a point where sometimes, I can't tell how many times I've cried over fights, before, during and after fights. Spencer's probably done it, and I bet Steve's probably done it once or twice, but nobody's ever seen him cry.
I cry all the time. I'm very emotional.
But, we're only human at the end of the day. And I think after that fight, because the world and his brother were watching him, and because he had this persona to live up to. But the one thing I do like about Ben Whittaker, what he said there was, he didn't look at social media and he shut himself down. It was just him and his coach, and he regrouped and got his head together.
And could you imagine
before it got too much?
And could you imagine this kid is boxing in front of his home crowd? It's his homecoming there in many ways in a fight of this magnitude, and he's getting booed in. The other kid's getting cheered in. There's a lot of emotion.
Why do you think? Because I remember sitting next to Noel Gallagher at a fight and going to know, what do you think? He goes, don't like all that showboating. I love it. I think it's part and parcel of the charisma of sport. I think we've got too many people in life that are pretty bland. So I actually like it as long as you can stand it up. So why do we think that the reaction towards him was so negative from the public?
But because...
Or perceived, seemed to be.
Purely because you're only as good as your last fight, and people were looking at that, and there was a lot of people questioning his heart, his desire, but he sold himself as this different character. Now they're going, you bottled it, mate, you spewed it. So he had a lot to prove. He had to show a lot of character in there, and I think that's why they booed him. That's the world that we live in today. That's the social media Steve was pointing out.
When social media came out in the beginning, I went on it for a very short time and I got off it. Yeah. I would hate to be around at a time when social media is commenting, dominating everything that goes on. It's really hard. Physically, boxing's hard, but now psychologically, emotionally, it's so much harder because of the social media aspect to it. I would hate to be world champion.
I'll stand corrected. What do we think next for Ben? Did he make his point last night? Because I think that he did what he should have done in the first fight. Yeah. Right. So he's evened up the scores now, done what we thought he should do now. What do we think next for Ben? Dan Aziz, someone of that nature?
Exactly that, mate. You nailed it. I think that's the next step for him. Dan Aziz has been to the very top, European champion, boxing world title eliminators. Maybe now slightly on the decline, looking at his recent performances, and you go, Ben Whittaker, if he's this guy that we're led to believe is going to be the next big star of British boxing, Dan Aziz is the perfect step for him at this stage.
I know, but he's really a novice in the game. He's very good at, the fights he's had, he's at a really top level. You need to slow him down and bring him on. Take your time with him. He's got a good coach who's got a lot of knowledge to pass on to him and educate him.
Yeah, he's had a handful of fights.
Take your time. Yeah. 2 years' time, 3 years' time is when he's going to peak.
He's had a handful of fights, and he's nowhere near what he thinks he is. And I'm sure his coach would be saying to him, you're not as good as what you think you are. Take a step back.
Good lessons learned. And Andy Lee in his corner is a major advance, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And he's done it inside and outside the rings.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
His dad don't even like him. You could not pay that man enough money to sit in this man's corner. Now that's an accomplishment, Chris. That's an accomplishment. Well done. The most unlikable geezer on the planet. Even your dumb dad don't like him.
How many eggs did you have to eat to fail those two drugs tests? You dirty little omelette.
You've tasted defeat. You've been rendered unconscious before. You was eating the canvas, literally.
I'm gonna beat him because I'm a better fighter than
but you're not.
In every single part.
You're not.
The feud goes on.
So this weekend coming up, we've got what a lot of people consider to be a big fight. I'm not sure I'm in that camp, but notwithstanding it, we'll debate it. Eubank Jr versus Conor Benn. This fight has been 2 years in the making, and we've seen a lot of controversy, a lot of challenges. But I want to focus on Eubank Jr. Over the last 2 years, what have we seen from him? What do we think we've seen since the last fight? Or the scheduling of the fight against Conor Benn. We've seen him go in against Liam Smith. We've seen him lose against Liam Smith. How do you think he's developed, Steve?
I think 2 years on, I think he's more mature as a person. I think he's better as a fighter. He's had some great experiences since the fight that was called off. I think the Eubank now is a better fighter than he was when the previous fight was postponed. I think he's better now. He's more mature. He seems to be more control of his career as well, which is also better.
Probably mentally stronger, I would say, Eubank. I mean, listen, when he stepped up to the plate previously against George Groves, obviously he lost that one. He's done it once or twice since then. Since then, he's, the times he has stepped up that he's lost. So this fight for me is down to like levels. You know, he's boxed at a higher level than Conor Benn, and he will draw on that experience to put him through this fight, because Conor Benn hasn't fought anybody of any real note. If you look at his record, there's no marquee names on his.
What do you think of the PR though? I mean, Chris has been. I've always been critical, insofar as it's my right to suggest that Chris Eubank Jr. tells us all the time that he wants to have these world title fights and never actually has them. And what we get to hear more about is how much money he's made, or how much his Las Vegas apartment or house looks like, and what he's doing in poker, and how he can take the piss out of Billy Joe Saunders for whatever reason he wants to do that. Yet I think he's been a brilliant showman in terms of, I think, the way that he's handled the PR around this fight, in terms of he's pretty much marginalised everybody at every press conference, hasn't he? He's had everybody in his pocket. You know, Conor's pushed back. He's put Eddie Hearn in his place for a variety of reasons. I mean, when you look at the PR perspective around Chris Eubank and how that he's conducted himself, what do you think of that?
Top draw.
Yeah?
Absolutely top draw.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He certainly can't sell a fight. Yeah. He's sold this. I mean, he has sold this fight, and he's an easy sell.
Yeah, I don't think you can argue with the publicity that Chris has brought to himself in the build-up to this fight. I think it's been first class, the way that he's dealt with everyone, not just with Conor Benn, with Eddie Hearn. Giving the undercard fighters, paying them off as well. That was brilliant.
I was going to say that.
I think that it's been, I think everything he's done so far has been absolutely first class.
Well, you brought that up. Let's have a listen to him saying that to Johnny Nelson.
Staying on the Sun now, mate, did you see that he paid all the undercard fighters from back in 2022 when the first fight was actually cancelled? Do you think that mugged Eddie off a little bit?
Mugged him off, mugged everybody off. Because what Chris did, when he mentioned it in the last press conference, I thought, why is that just slid on the radar? Why does nobody make a big deal of that?
It was a class touch,
That's
man.
a massive touch.
Yeah.
And so all of the promoters, all of them, all of the promoters that are out there, and all of the guys that have got the big bucks, and they're on the top of the card, and the fight starts falling through. What Chris Eubank Jr. did, to me, was commendable. Because I've been one of those fighters that's turned up for a fight and the fight's been off the night before, and you think everybody's on AJ money. Not everybody's on AJ money. 5% of the fighters are on mad money. 95% of them fighters have to subsidise their career with a second job. So Chris doing that, he's basically saying, Eddie, Conor, come on, step up. These guys are always some developed amnesia. They've gotten deaf and they've forgotten, thinking, nah. And it's up to the press and the public to put them under pressure to say, shame on you. If he can do it, why are you not doing it? If you love our sport so much, if you care for the fight so much, why are you not doing it? So when he did it, I'm like, you know what? That's a proper drop of the mic.
When we listen to that, we look at the positioning of the first fight, or the fight when it was originally going to happen two and a half years ago. The positioning probably was that Chris Eubank Jr. was the villain of the piece prior to the events that transpired around Conor, but the positioning was that Chris Eubank Jr. was the bad guy. We now got a different situation. Do you see it that way? Do you think the fighter going into this fight that's quote-unquote the people's champion, if there is such a thing in this instance?
Eubanks has won that hands down.
You think?
Absolutely hands down. To do what he's done and to pay the undercard out of his own money because the first show was cancelled, Johnny Nelson's got it right. It's a magnanimous thing to do, and his stock would have gone right through the roof. I can't even actually believe he's doing that. It's brilliant. It really is. And I'm sure all the guys that are on that card will thank him for it. They're not going to say no. It's great.
There's one man who looks like he's not going to be present. I've had the pleasure of doing interviews with him, which are challenging in their own way. But Chris Eubank Sr. Let's have a listen to Chris Eubank Sr. speaking to Seconds Out last week about this event.
Because I will not be an accomplice to their stupidity, to their circus. It's against the rules, what's happening is against the rules. 147 fighting 160 is against the rules. When Kell Brook was made to fight GGG, it's against the rules. That boy had his eye socket smashed. This is what happens. The promoters, to them, it's just a game. But to the warriors, it's a way of life. Junior, you're smashing an egg against this guy's face. I taught you that. I didn't teach you that. Who taught you that? Did Karen teach you that? Who taught you that? That's disgraceful. I'm gonna stand in your corner. You must be mad. You must be mad. I would never be in your corner. You're a disgrace. You're smashing an egg in someone's face, and then you're saying you're trying to justify it. There's no justification for that. There's nothing noble about that.
Right. Let's go straight to you with it, Steve. You know Chris Eubank Jr, you fought him. I listened to him say once upon a time that this was legalised murder. He's directing his guns at Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. What do you make when you listen to those comments?
He's just knocking the whole show. I don't know why he's doing it. If he was involved, he'd be bigging it up. He's not involved now, he's knocking it. He's talking about moving up weights. All the great fighters have done it. Duran moved up, Leonard moved up, Hearns moved up. They've all moved up weights and fought bigger men. So there's no issue there. I just think it's almost begrudgery that he's not involved, that he's not leading them into the ring and he's not posing. It's not his night, he's not involved. I think he's just jealous.
Do you? Because his original agenda was, and do you not think he had a point about the original fight? If you remember the original fight, when they were suggesting that they needed to get him down from although he hasn't fought at 168 since 2018, his argument was you're boiling him down from 168 down to 157. And we saw Chris Eubank Jr on the scales, and he did look very emaciated. Do you not think that besides the rancour and the difficulty that's going on between him and his son, where I do agree with you that it seems to be, when you listen to Eubank Sr, it starts, everything's about him. And if you're a man of the world, you want to be your own man, come out of your own, your father's shadow, don't you?
You support your son. You don't knock it. You support him. You wish him all the best. You don't, whether your opinions are right or wrong, you keep them to yourself if it puts down his show. He should be bigging his son up and not finding fault and pointing out.
Do you think, Steve? Do you think he's better off, Chris Eubank Jr, without his father being there?
No.
You don't?
Without his father being, on the night.
Correct.
I think he's better off without his father being there on the night. It would be a distraction. But I think his father's presence and his father's history is what made this fight so big, because if they weren't the sons of who they were, it would still be a great fight, but it wouldn't get the publicity and the attention it's getting.
What do you think? Do you think he's better off not having his father in and around him? No,
I think that in an ideal world, it would be much better if his father was around him in the build-up to this fight and obviously on the night as well. Not with the involvement that he used to have, because it was all the Steve, it was all the Chris Eubank Sr show when he was involved with him. I don't agree with that. I think keep him away from the corner, but I think the involvement generally, I agree with Steve. I think he should be there. He should be a part of that. They are their father's sons.
But can he play a back seat though? Would he? If he could play a back seat,
and I think that's the problem.
But can he play the back seat,
Steve? That's the problem, I think, anyway, and that's why they've got to this stage in their relationship and why the relationship's broke down, because perhaps Senior can't take that back seat. But talking about this being a disgrace with fighters going up and unnatural weights. Look, it's a 147, a guy that hasn't boxed at 147 for a couple of years either, by the way. He's been up at 154. So it's not a massive jump. It's not like when Kell Brook boxed Triple G. Triple G was a full-blown middleweight. Kell Brook was a welterweight. This is slightly different. We're talking
Chris
about
Senior isn't making a case for Conor.
Yeah.
He's making a case for his own son.
Yeah.
He's not arguing Conor's position, saying he's a 147 fighter that's gone up to 154, can't knock anybody out at 154 currently. Now fighting somebody at 160. He's making the case for his son coming down from 168, which, by the way, he hasn't fought at for 6 years.
The last, it was 2019, he beat James DeGale.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he's boxed at 160. Yeah, he's boxed at 160 for a number of years, so that shouldn't be a problem. He's got the 10 pounds rehydration clause, which, by the way, happens in the morning. The time he gets in the ring, he's going to probably be 175 pounds.
Are you in the camp that his father's better off not being there? Or
he's not going to be there.
No, he's not.
No, he's not going to be there. He's a man of his word, and I think he says what he means and means what he says. I think the fact remains is that the whole thing is quite sad that, there are personal issues going on between father and son. They've been washed out in the public. They are public property, the pair of them, because they are boxing celebrities. And when they have a dispute, it's been washed out in the public. It's horrible. It's horrible to see. It would be great if they could make it up, but it's not going to happen. So, and I can't see Senior turning up at this fight. He's a man of his word.
No, absolutely. We're going to talk about Conor Benn in a moment, but let's talk about Chris Eubank's approach to this fight. He is, in a lot of people's minds, the favourite. How do you guys see him needing to approach this fight? What does he need to do?
He's just got to hold his ground and let Conor come on. Conor Benn's the emotional guy, isn't he? He's the guy that's going to go forward. He's the guy that's been talking about starting very fast, putting it straight on him. We've heard Nigel Benn saying the fight's over in 4 rounds. If he has that approach, I think that Chris Chris Eubank Jr. is very, very dangerous with that right hand, and that right uppercut that he throws is a lethal shot as well. If Conor comes in square with that, it may be his own undoing. So all Eubank's got to do is just hold his ground, let him come, create the space a little bit, and that's probably, he hasn't got to go looking for him.
Again, it's down to levels. I just feel that Eubanks has boxed at a higher level. He's boxed Viddal, he's boxed George Groves, he's boxed Billy Joe Saunders. All right, he's come up short, but he's had that experience. There isn't anybody on Conor Benn's resume that you could even suggest has been anywhere near of that sort of calibre of boxer, and he knows his way around the ring, so providing he's not weight...
Algieri was a good fighter, wasn't he?
Excuse me?
Algieri was a good fighter.
Yeah, I'd probably beat Algieri. You know, I'm not really...
You're
I'm
a three-weight world champion.
I'm not really buying into that. Sorry, I just think he's quite ordinary in the bigger picture.
He was at the end of his career anyway, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was at the end of his career. So I just feel that Eubanks' overall experience, Simon, and his size should play a big, big part. The smaller guy's always going to be chasing. The smaller guy, Conor Benn's always going to be chasing Eubank and throwing everything he can. So he's going to tire himself out at some point. And Eubank's smart enough and sensible enough
to stay out of range.
Stay out of range. Keep him at range.
You go with that, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, in conversation, it all looks like Eubank, should win this fight. But when you have power, you're always dangerous. I mean, look at his dad. Some of his biggest wins came when he was on his last legs, almost about to fall over from being hurt, and threw these shots from the floor and landed and knocked out the opponent. So the danger's always there. So if Eubank keeps it together, sticks to his boxing experience that he has over Conor, and holds it together, he should be successful, but he's in with someone who's dangerous. And Conor has built himself up and put himself under so much pressure with his attitude and his behaviour that he's going to have to come out throwing bombs. And if the bombs land, we'll see what happens.
Right, makes for a fascinating debate.
Live on DAZN Worldwide, April 26th. Eubank Jr. versus Ben. Over 30 years of rivalry and hatred. I do hate him. All comes down to this. This is a war. A bloodline born. The next generation. A new destroyer. Hatred in their blood.
This is going to be a bloodbath.
The family. History.
This is the final chapter.
Legacy. Eubank Jr. versus Ben. April 26th. Find now at DAZN.com/boxing.
So, on the other side of the fight, where are we on Conor Benn?
He's good.
Is he a world level fighter?
He's good. He's aggressive. Is he world level? Again, this is about levels, isn't it, Simon? Do you see what I mean? I'd like to think he could hold his own with Eubank, but I just see Eubank's size just being too much for him.
Yeah, I think that for Conor Benn, Duke's right in what he says. Listen, the kid has all the potential. He's improving all the time, and he's very explosive at his weight. We're jumping up weights here, but he's very unproven at this level as well. Whereas some people may say with the knockout against Liam Smith, Eubank may be on the decline a little bit, but the guy can still fight very much so. And with what's on the line, he's got a hard night in front of him, Conor Benn. But it's going to be interesting to see if he can raise the levels. And until he steps up the level, we don't really know.
I mean, he on his resume, he's got what? Algieri, we just spoke a moment ago. He's had Sebastian Formella. He's had Samuel Vargas. He's had Granados. All of these are decent fighters that have had decent careers, and he's come through them all most of the time in flying colours. Where do you position him, Steve?
I think that Conor is still improving.
Yeah.
I wish he had more time, a couple of years earlier, started boxing earlier, would be at a higher level. I think Eubank is probably a little below his peak, but still at a top level. I think Conor's still improving. But they can't wait around for another couple of years for this fight to happen because the age, Eubank Jr. is getting older. So I think if Conor wins this, I think he's going to go on to improve even more, become a better fighter. I think it's early in his career. He's getting this fight.
He's sort of in a win-win position, though, Conor, isn't he? Because if he loses this,
he's
at 160, he's a
147
fighter. And if he wins, he takes himself up to another stratosphere.
Yeah.
So I think it's a win-win. Whereas with Eubank, he loses.
Yeah, it's done.
It's all over.
Well, let's hear from Conor talking to talkSPORT last week.
I don't want no excuses. Everybody was moaning about the £3. I'm sitting there going, why is no one caring about my safety? What about me going up 2 weight divisions? Everyone's moaning about him and his £3 that he's got to lose. Not about me going up 2 weight divisions. It's just funny how the media can twist it. No one cares about my health and safety. Oh, but he's got to lose £3. Oh, poor Chris. Poor Chris fighting a welterweight. Do you know what I mean? It's all right, cool, no problem. I'll meet you at 160. No excuses then.
What are you going to do to him? You know what I'm going to do.
Go on, describe it.
No, 3 rounds. I give him 3 rounds before he's eating the canvas.
What do you think, Steve, about the level of emotion that Conor Benn exhibits? Do you think it's going to be played like a fiddle by Chris Eubank Jr. during the course of the week, manipulated, twisted and turned with?
I think Conor's put himself under pressure and has continued to put himself under pressure to push himself to another level. He's telling people, he's convincing the world, but he's also convincing himself what he wants to do. I honestly see when the bell rings, Conor's going to come out throwing bombs. And I see a knockout win for somebody. It's either going to be Eubank with that dangerous uppercut or Conor with an overhand shot. And that's how it's going to... It's not going to go the distance. I just really believe they're going to go at it. You know, if Eubank can weather the storm, maybe in latter rounds he might come on top. I don't know. What's his emotion going to be? Is he going to fire back? Is he going to let...
Because we don't really know what Conor Benn's chin's like, do we?
No. And also there is a massive size difference. And when you're in a fight and you're the smaller guy and you're chasing the fight and you're giving it your all and you're putting everything into every punch, you go tired. Doesn't matter how fit you are, you're still going to go tired. You can't really afford to go tired against Eubank. If nothing else, Eubank is like a wily old fox.
He goes tired if it goes the distance, but if he knocks him out early, he won't get tired. I mean, Mike Tyson was a small heavyweight, and he came out throwing big shots and took out all the big guys. So
I can't see
the chance is there to happen. It can happen.
I can't see Conor Benn throwing bombs like a Mike Tyson.
I'm making a comparison. I'm not saying he is Mike Tyson, but what I'm saying is, it's a good... We're here arguing. We like to think that we know our boxing, but we're here arguing both sides, which is what's selling this fight. It's a good fight. Some people, you know, are giving reasons why Eubank will win, and other people are giving reasons why Conor will win. And we're agreeing and disagreeing with everybody, which tells me it's good because it's not one-sided.
We know Conor's an emotional kid, and we know, and them emotions, when he comes out to that crowd, there's going to be a 60,000 strong crowd there. We know those emotions are going to play a huge part in it, and he will go out there fast. And you're right in what you say, Steve. That could be the ways to victory, but that could also be his undoing.
I think Conor is playing the emotion more because I've seen an interview when a point was made about Chris Eubank Jr. and his dad coming, and Conor completely toned it down and became a little bit considerate.
That was with Piers Morgan, wasn't it?
He came right down and he said, "Oh no, I hope your dad's there," because he saw the father-son love that he has and he wants him to share that. That to me shows a human side. And then he kind of realised, oh, hang on a minute, this can't happen, and he went back to the anger. So I think
Eubank didn't like that.
No, I think Eubank didn't like it because it was good. But I think maybe Conor could be playing it more. You know, he's not completely letting the emotions take over. He's using the emotion and he's selling it through the emotion. But I think he's under control also.
Well, you know, his dad was very emotional like that as well, and obviously you boxed his dad and you beat his dad. Did those emotions play a part when he got in the ring as well? Because he was emotional. He was talking about being fired up. How did he start the fight? Do you feel that them emotions took over in the fight with him?
All I know is he hit very hard.
Yeah.
So does his son.
Yeah, but he started very fast
and if he does hit very hard, and if Conor hits very hard like his dad, at the level, he can hit hard at a lower level. If he can hit hard enough to take out Eubank's in trouble because he will get hit. And he has been dropped before. You know, Eubank Jr. could take a shot, and Eubank Jr. take a shot.
Conor Benn isn't Nigel Benn. He doesn't.
And Eubank is not Chris Eubank Sr. either. So, but they're very similar in level.
Yeah.
As their fathers were. It's a match. I mean, the fact we're arguing about it and agreeing and disagreeing
I don't want to be a fanny, but does anyone worry for Conor Benn? He makes the point himself about everyone's worried about Chris Eubank losing 3 pounds. No one's worried about me stepping up 2 weight classes. The argument would then be 154. Nigel was adamantly wanted this fight. When I had a long conversation with him, I said to him, why doesn't he go fight a world title? All the challenges he's had over the last 2 years, people question his validity because of the failed drugs test. Why doesn't he go and fight for a world title? He's got the Barrios world title to fight for, and I think he'd redeem himself in the eyes of the public. Really, what he's doing now is he's taking a fight for money on the back of your legacy and the other fella's dad.
Yeah.
But do you have any concerns for his safety in this fight?
Eubank Sr.'s got concerns for this fight. And Conor Benn's safety.
But do you look at it from that perspective?
On a personal level, it doesn't really affect me in that way, in that respect. You know, if you're going to jump up, as he's saying, 2 weight divisions to fight Eubank Sr.
Well, I'll ask you the question because, like, the example was made. Sorry to interrupt you, Duke, with the situation surrounding Kell Brook, which I think ruined his career.
Yeah,
he fights Golovkin, who's a middleweight. Yeah. When he's a welterweight. Gets his face punched in, and then goes and loses his next fight against Errol Spence, and Kell goes in a different direction. And there's similarity to that. I know. I'm not going to compare.
But that's the gamble.
But you asked 2 questions earlier.
Yeah.
But you actually asked 2 questions. One question you asked about why is he taking this fight, not other title fights.
Yeah.
The money. And the
Correct.
exposure is the answer to that one. And the other one is about the weight. I'm not concerned about Conor going up a weight because he's going to come in losing less weight and stronger.
Yeah.
It takes more out of you to drop weight than to put weight on. And it's not like a 30-pound difference. It could be 10-pound natural difference. So I'm not concerned about going up a weight. I'm more concerned about coming down a weight.
Also, though, moving up in weights, I've jumped through a few weights in my career. You take the power with you, but then you get to a point where you've jumped up so far.
He hasn't taken it to 154 though, has he?
No, that's my whole point. You jump up so far, and then all of a sudden, you guys with your best shot, they blink and take it because they can absorb your power. They can absorb your power, and that's what I think we're going to get in this particular fight.
I think a lot of people are talking about Chris Eubank Jr.'s vulnerability as well because he got knocked out by Liam Smith. Liam Smith is a big puncher, a world-class fighter as well.
He is actually,
It happens in boxing. He's come back. He's won since then. Serrametta, it wasn't a particularly great performance, but he got the victory and he beat Liam Smith in the return as well. So you look at it and you go, the durability could still well be there. And if it is, then it is going to be a tough night for the smaller guy.
Yeah, but we know if he's been hit, if you hit him, he'll go. If you hit him right, he will go. We know that. It's happened. And it can happen again.
Because I think Conor's ferocity plays a part in this. And I think I've spent time with him. I think he's a really, really nice kid. And I think some of this anger and frustration is for the benefit of selling the fight. Some of it is because of the last 2 years and the observations that have come his way about the failed drugs test, and all of this comes out in this confected outrage, I think, sometimes in terms of what he really feels. I don't really think there's a real hatred between the two fighters. I think there's a distaste and there's an opportunity for them to turn it into this grudge match and then trade off their father's reputation as well. And all of a sudden, you've got this phenomenon. You've got 65,000 people going to a football stadium with probably 750 to best part of 1 million pay-per-views, which is trebling what Better Biev versus Bivol get. We're talking about two world-class elite fighters getting nowhere near the kind of exposures of two guys that are ultimately nowhere near that level. So I'm fascinated by the fact that I think that Conor can bring it. But when we talk about my view, yours is more prevalent. Predictions. How do you see this fight? Who wants to go first with that?
I don't see it going a distance. I see Eubank has got that dangerous uppercut, and I think that's probably going to be his money shot, or an overhand shot from Conor. I just don't see it going a distance. I see one knocking the other out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a brutal fight. A bit like their fathers were, but 35 years ago, I do believe that. But I just think that Chris Eubank Jr. wins the fight and he wins it on points. I think that he will just get into a rhythm. Conor will tire in the second half of the fight and Eubank will come out a points winner. Yeah,
that's what I think. I can't really see Ben's power playing a big part in this because he's going to fall short because of the size difference. And Eubank is wily enough and clever enough to tie him. Tie him up if he needs to.
Do you think Ben's
lean on him?
I do. I've just got a sneaking suspicion. But is Tony Bellew right then in what he said, which is it's a fight of two halves? If it's going to be won, it's going to be won by Ben in the first 6 rounds. If it goes past 6 rounds, then Eubank will take him down the stretch and beat him that way.
You can't sit on the fence though, can you? You're asking for a prediction. You want an outright winner.
But will Eubank maintain strength, haven't dropped away for the second half of the fight? Will he be weak?
Conor,
we don't know.
Conor's got much more of a chance of knocking him out in the first 6 than he has in the back 6, yeah.
Why do you say that?
Because I just think he'll tire. I think because of the size difference with Chris Eubank Jr. Conor will have to use so much energy to get there.
Do you not think Eubank Jr. will tire too because he had to cut weight? He won't have the same strength and stamina?
No, but there's a lot of talk about this cut weight, Steve, but he's been this weight since 2019. It's not like he's dropping down a weight.
No, it's nothing new.
It's not like he's done it since beating James
No, he's not, but he's cutting weight, so if he was putting weight on, he'd be stronger.
Yeah.
He'd have more strength more in his tank.
Understood.
So he's cutting weight, whereas the other fighter is putting on weight, so he's going to have more strength in his tank. He'd be stronger at the heavier weight than you would be at cutting weight.
But they've still got the rehydration clause, right? So Eubanks is going to be pumped up, fully strong, and I think firing on all cylinders.
He's going to be full of fluids and so on. But if he came in at 168 pounds of weight and that way, he'd have more muscle. He's not going to grow muscle overnight. He's going to rehydrate.
No.
But it will affect you. Cutting weight will affect you.
But Ben can only put on so much weight.
I can only go on my own experience. At 160 pounds, I won a world title. I was weak. At 168 pounds, I won a world title, and I never felt so strong in all my life. I still could have made 160 pounds, but I was a weaker person at it. So to me,
I found jumping up through the weights. Once I'd hit my fourth weight division, there was a stone difference, and I just found that the guys I was hitting with my best shot that were a stone heavier, It had no effect on
They
him.
absorbed it.
Yeah, and it breaks your heart.
We know we've covered where the losers go. If Conor Benn loses, we know that he's got the built-in opportunity to say, "I've went up 2 weight classes. I'm out of here. I'm all right. That's not a problem. He can go again, and credibility won't be a massive issue." If Chris Eubank loses, we know there's a big credibility issue. We can't see much of a future for him. Where do they go if they win?
I think for Eubank, then surely his next fight has to be against one of the real big players in that weight division. You know, potentially for a world title. I mean, if you think about this logically. This has to be the richest non-title fight of all time.
Yeah. You could argue both ways that if it's a dramatic fight and like their fathers in the first one,
rematch.
we get it again.
The draw.
The draw.
The draw.
Or if somebody wins big and looks impressive in the win,
because that's where the financial reward is.
Go for the pay. Go for Canelo. Go for the payday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Fascinating. We'll see. Do you think they're going to hug at the end of the fight?
Yeah.
You do?
I do, yeah.
Yes, I do.
100%.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
I bet they don't.
Oh, no, they will do.
I bet they don't.
Are you just going against the grain because you want to be the one on the other?
Nah, listen, you can imagine if Ben gets chinned, he ain't going to want to shake Eubank's
Yeah,
hand.
but you know what it's like once those emotions, the emotions again that we're talking about, once they're out the window.
There's a respect there.
Will you be watching it, Simon?
There's a respect.
You know my view on this fight.
Are you going to come?
No.
I'll have a seat next to me.
I can't have been a last 12 months saying I don't like this fight. I think it's a farce. I think they're trading up their father's name.
Can I read out the undercard to you? Have you seen the undercard? It's one of the best undercards I've seen in a long, long time, and we're not even talking about it. You got cruiserweight guys who are heading towards world title fights. You got the rubber match like heavyweight. You got Liam Smith taking on this young Irish kid, which is a major gamble for him, and so on. But the undercard to me alone is a night to go watch boxing.
If you don't go, mate, watch it on the talkSPORT Boxing YouTube channel. You can watch it.
Thank you, mate. Thank you, mate. Spence, we saw Dalton Smith pretty much dismantle Matteo Germain on live on DAZN over the weekend. Got a lot of rounds in, looked good. I think the opponent was pretty negative, so he could only look a certain way. But things are in the upward move now for Dalton, aren't they?
Yeah.
And he's talking about world title shots. Where's he going next?
Listen, I thought it was a calculated performance. He got 3 knockdowns in that performance, didn't take any silly chances. I think he goes to Bellew next for the WBC title. He's in that position, and that's the fight that he'll want to get. He'll want to get that world title before the fight everyone's talking about, obviously him and Adam Azim. You know, when that fight happens, let that build, let it brew, because that's going to be a super fight in the future. But I think he goes for the WBC route, and I think that Eddie's got the connections to be able to make that happen next.
You like Dalton Smith, don't you?
I think he wins it. I think he wins the world championship in his very next fight if they can make it. You know, Eddie Hearn's a very shrewd promoter and knows exactly when to pick the fights for his fighters. He's not going to put his fighter in a fight he doesn't think he can win, or he's only got a 50% chance of winning. So that would be the obvious choice to make.
Where are you in the Adam Azim, Dalton Smith?
Yeah, I like Adam Azim. I like him. I would tip him against Smith.
So would I.
Yeah, I would tip him against Smith. Better boxer, just a nicer boxer. Smith's physically very strong, but I like Azim.
It looks like the IBF are set to order Dubois versus Chisora today, but it's Usyk versus Dubois for July the 12th that looks like it's going to be slated. Where are you on that fight, Steve?
We look at Usyk, to me, it looks like he's getting better. He's improving. Does Usyk take the boys serious? If he doesn't, he could be in for a bit of a shock. But he will
do after the first fight, won't he? Because he got dropped by him, and there's a lot of debate about whether that was a low blow or not. Did you think it was a low blow?
It doesn't matter. He done the smart thing. You know, he took a break and reassert himself.
But it'll go to the fact that he'll take him seriously, though, won't it? Because you're sort of alluding to the fact he might not.
I just think Usyk is getting better. I think Usyk looks like he should win not easier, but more convincingly next time. But the boy's he's dangerous. He's always going to be dangerous, and it's until the last second of the 12th round, it's not over, and he can hit.
You've pretty much previously said before that you don't think anyone beats Usyk, but in the same breath, you've talked about Dubois' age, coming of age, and being the most ferocious fighter around at this moment in time in the heavyweight division because he's right on it. We both predicted that if he fought Joseph Parker, that we felt he was going to roll through Joseph Parker with no disrespect intended. What say you about this fight?
I'm a big fan of Daniel Dubois, and I'd love to see him beat Usyk, but I just can't see it because Usyk isn't slipping. He's not. He's like his engine is like that of a Rolls Royce. He's just purring along quite comfortably, and he can obviously do things which other heavyweights can't do. In as much as he can adapt during a fight, if he's behind, he can adapt. If he's ahead, he can take a few rounds off. He can mix it up, box, fight.
Is Dubois better than when he fought him?
Oh, 100%. Daniel Dubois is, like I say, Daniel Dubois is a machine. And I'd back Daniel Dubois. If he was fighting anybody else other than Alexander Usyk, I'd back him to win.
I think that you've got to look at it now, though, and say, what's the biggest challenge for Alexander Usyk out there right now? And it is the improving Daniel Dubois. I think the fight that he had with Usyk, you know, a couple of years ago, I think that moulded Daniel as a fighter. I think that Daniel then started believing himself a little bit more. The team up with Don Charles was good as well. And you go, if anyone's going to give him a good run, it will be Dubois. Of course, Usyk was going to start a huge favourite, and you know, and it's going to be an uphill task for Daniel Dubois. But I think that him getting a shot for the undisputed, yeah, great. We get the undisputed again for the second time, which will be fantastic for boxing fans as well, and a great opportunity for Daniel.
We saw Fraser Clarke back in the ring on the weekend, and I think we'll all be pleased to see him back fit and firing. Do you see Fraser likely to be lined up for the winner of the rematch between David Adelaide and Jamie TKV?
I do. Do I think he's going to sit it out before he gets that shot? No, I think he's going to need to go again because he never really tested what he wanted to test there. It was a first round KO. I think you need to get him in with maybe an international opponent, someone that's going to give him a few rounds. But that's the fight that he wants. He wants the winner of that. He said he wants to, fast track this now.
Do you think by having this fight, Duke, I mean, there's always an element of PTSD and remembrance or going back to a situation, and we're probably not going to know that with Fraser until he gets a real whack.
He needs to get more rounds under his belt. He needs to be hit and absorb shots and come back and know in his own mind, you know what, I've been hit with good shots, I can take it, my jaw's good now. Physically, it's been proven, and psychologically, I understand it. He didn't get that in his last fight because he blew the guy away in the first round, so he needs to... Maybe he's getting in sparring. Yeah. I don't know, but it's not like when you get into fights, that's the real test.
That's what he said. He said, look, he's been in with some good sparring. He's had some strong, hard sparring, and everything's been okay. So he said, look, my face, it's healed a lot quicker than we thought it was. But it is healed. But
it's not, as you said, it's not 10-ounce gloves in the fight. Yeah.
And the what if will always be there, won't it? As he goes through the rounds, 7, 8, 9, 10, and he's in with a world-class opponent.
But is he trying to fast-track it because he has the concern, maybe? Do you think maybe he has the concern he could have a big jaw and he wants to fast-track it to get the payday instead of getting his jaw probably damaged in a lower...
No, I just think that he recognises that now the current crop that's around, and you've got the younger fighters coming through as well, Moses Atoma and all that, you need other dance partners. He recognises that he wants to fast track to get back in there. If he gets that British title, he's back in the mix.
And he's a little bit older as well, isn't he?
He's older as well. Wicked guy, Fraser.
He can last longer, but he needs to get some rounds under his belt. He needs rounds under his belt to answer the question.
He's back, and he came through safely and successfully, so we're all pleased for him. Right, that's it for episode 117 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan, Spencer Oliver. Thank you, Duke. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
We'll be here next week to pick the bones out of the Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr. fight.